Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the BGCP podcast for the Big Glasgow Comic Page.com. As you can see this week, there's only two of us here, myself, Dan, and Alan. We are down a few, but we're still going to give you that weekly golden content because we're just pure consistent like that. So I think this week we're just going to fire through some news.
Can't stop.
And then we will jump into like stuff that happened during the week. Maybe the last episode of Winter Soldier a wee bit, and then we'll go into our sort of our poll for this week, which was the kind of recommendations for people trying to get into comics for the first time and where you should start. So if you're good, Alan, we'll just jump into the news. And the way we're going to do it is I'm just going to fire stuff out, and Alan's going to say aye, no, maybe, because the first one, I do apologise, but we'll get out of the way quick. There is some further Justice League, Snyderverse news. This one, it's a bit tangentially Snyder, to be honest, but apparently Ray Fisher has said that he's still open to return to DC for a Cyborg solo film. Is that something that you would see or care about?
Probably not.
Nah.
Like, no disrespect to Ray Fisher whatsoever, but I just couldn't care less about any of those characters from this iteration of them, like, so far. So,
I mean,
they would need to pull out some spectacular behind-the-scenes folk to do it. Like, it would need to be a director that I was interested in. It would need to be someone writing it that I thought was competent. If it was the same old people that's been handling it so far, no interest at all.
I actually agree with you. I think that it needs DC the now. I feel like any DC film needs a fresh take. It needs a fresh director, and I think that's why they've brought James Gunn in for the Suicide Squad and Matt Reeves for Batman. I feel like if you get somebody a fresh pair of eyes on it, they could maybe do something with it. Because I think the actor's good. I like Ray Fisher, but yeah, just as you said, what we've seen so far has just been a bit dragged out, long in the tooth.
Yeah,
unnecessarily so.
I was over it. I was over it. Probably Batman versus Superman, and then the Justice League was garbage, and then obviously my thoughts on the Zack Snyder cut are pretty clear as well.
Aye.
So, yep, fresh pair of hands on it, fresh pair of eyes, whatever. Then I would definitely be interested. But as it stands now, the only one I'm really interested in is Suicide Squad.
There was also, just while we're talking about the Justice League, there was some concept art revealed for that film, and it showed Jon Stewart's Green Lantern, but it was just a drawing of a dude in a Green Lantern suit. It was quite a cool drawing, but I mean that movie's long enough.
Yeah, no, it looks nice.
That movie's long enough. Do we need Jon Stewart in it?
I mean, it would have made more sense maybe to have Jon Stewart show up at the end rather than Martian Manhunter, because like that just completely annoyed the hell out of me. But obviously they were told that they couldn't use him, so not his fault. Yeah, Zack Snyder's fault. So
that's weird though. Like, I mean, I get maybe the studio wants to give a character like Green Lantern more build up, but I don't know. It would have been cool to see him. Speaking of how long that film is,
considering when they go back to the Age of Heroes and they show you that, you know, Green Lanterns are covering Sector 2814 or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah, it's like if they're there, why they're not
murdered by
where are they?
Young Darkseid.
Yeah.
See, makes no sense.
Something else talking about the length of the film. There was an extended nightmare scene released on YouTube from the scene where Leto and Affleck are having a conversation.
We live in a society.
Yeah. Well, it included that line that was apparently cut. I mean, I watched it. I feel like it was pretty much the same clip except from that line, so I don't really know what the big deal was, but
yeah,
we'll cover it anyway. Right, on to the fun.
I was
you go.
honestly sitting watching that, and I had like the gun in my mouth, like just pure, please let this film finish at that point. It was so bad.
I can't believe you actually watched the extended clip.
He was going to give you a reach around.
I know, what a weird line. Like, it wasn't even funny. It was like, what?
I know. It was just super weird. Like, okay. But then I have read something else saying that how Zack Snyder does like to kind of queer code a lot of his villains, and, you know, not in a, like, he has nothing to say about it. It's just that all his heroes are like uber masculine, like toxic almost men, and his villains are all a bit kind of oh sailor, like just pure like camp and really like it's it's a problem, and I just don't like what he does, and so that's part of it.
I'm now thinking of Zack Snyder films and villains, and I'm like, Ozymandias, and yeah.
Ozymandias, you had the dude from Dawn of the Dead, which I didn't see, but I've watched enough
Yeah.
clips of that I'm like, yep, they're just making that guy like. Nah. Anyway, like let's move
Yeah,
on.
talk about beat a dead horse, man. There was another trailer released for the Suicide Squad. It was like a TV friendly trailer where like the swear words bleeped and stuff. But it showed you a wee bit more of the film. I think looked alright.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah, no, it looked good.
I
Yeah,
I actually preferred this trailer. I think I don't know why. I just thought it flowed better, personally.
it's less silly than the last one, which I mean I like the
Maybe.
silliness of the last one, but I like this one as well. I like James Gunn. I like his films, so I like the cast, and I'm looking forward to it. Like King Shark is going to be my favourite of the summer, I think,
I mean,
or
I'll
Starro maybe because that just looks cool as hell.
I'll see. I mean, yeah, talk about Starro. Apparently, it's been debunked that Taika Waititi's going to be voicing Starro, so we still don't know who Taika's going to play. He is confirmed to be in it, but he's not Starro, so we know that.
Oh, I did not know that. Like, I'd heard he was going to be in it, but I didn't realise that he was supposed to be maybe
Yeah,
Starro,
but
or maybe not.
I think people just watched the first trailer and because he wasn't in it, people assumed, oh, he's going to be Starro, but no, apparently not. Which I mean, I wouldn't have minded.
Who's the cat?
The
Who's the jaguar thing that's like licking the
the
window and stuff like that? Is that maybe him?
no, the rodent is it's played by Sean Gunn, the how James Gunn's brother.
Oh,
He done like the
aye.
body for Rocket and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's playing him. I think there's another actor doing the voice, but it's not Taika. I can't remember who it is, but Sean Gunn's doing the body for him. Black Adam also got a release date. We were talking about some casting news for Black Adam the other week. Has
Yeah.
been announced it's going to release on the 29th of July 2022. Which, I mean, it's a year away, but I'm not that bothered about it, to be honest. I mean, I'll see Black Adam when it comes out, but I don't think MJ's chopping at the bit for it.
Same. It's it's The Rock, and I do like Black Adam as a character. Like he's, obviously he's generally speaking a villain. You can't really have The Rock coming in having his own film and being like a complete bad guy though. So he'd probably be some sort of anti-hero or whatever. But The Rock's always watchable, and Black Adam's a cool character. So I'm into it, but I'm just not super excited for it.
Yeah, I'm the same. Like
DC really need to go a long way at the moment to have me excited for anything.
I-
Like their cartoons are great, but their films are not so much.
I also think that it's been so long since Black Adam got announced that I think it's lost some traction. Like, I think it was announced, I don't know, I think I was still in uni. That was like 3-4 years ago. And it was like, oh, there's Black Adam film coming. And now we're just getting a release date. It's just been pushed back so much. I think it's kind of lost a bit of momentum that way.
Aye.
One I'm very.
I think obviously 2020 has messed up everything, like in that regard. But
Aye.
it's
Because that's the thing.
definitely the longer it goes, the more.
There was some things like on track that have obviously
Yeah.
been pushed back, but there was some things that had already been delayed that just get delayed further, and this is one of them. So yeah, it kind of sucks that way. But that's what it is.
It's like books. If books with long delays, I always just forget about.
Uh-huh.
Like All Star Superman, which we will talk about at some point later on. One of the best books I've ever read, but up until the other day, I had never read issue 12.
Right.
Like it went that long.
Yeah.
That I think I picked it up and it just got put in a box, and I'd never actually finished the series.
Aye.
So it was good to read that and get it done. But when books have massive long delays, like Early Image, 1990s, it was ridiculous.
Aye.
They were garbage anyway, most of them. But like if you're not putting it out consistently, it kind of definitely takes away from the excitement. And
Yeah.
whatnot.
Talking about something that
That's a drink of that,
I'm
so.
looking forward to is the new Batman film from Matt Reeves, the Robert Pattinson film. I'm very much looking forward to that, and it has been announced that obviously it's not going to be a part of like any other film, any other universe that's been established so far. But there's apparently something saying that it's going to be set in Earth 2, which is fine, but
Really?
I didn't need to be told that. Like, see, just give me a Batman film that's set in a different universe. It doesn't need to be Earth 2, but sure, okay,
Yeah.
if you want. It's a bit I don't know. It seems
At this point,
tertiary.
we've had how many different takes on Batman?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
fine. Like,
exactly.
you've had the Michael Keaton ones, you've had the Val Kilmer, like none of them really kind of tied in that much. And then obviously the Nolan ones, and now Zack Snyder and whatnot. And it's just like, right, just you're probably better off doing that at DC at this point, because trying to tie it all in together like Marvel and whatnot, it's obviously a very difficult thing to do, as you've seen by the reaction to most of the Monsterverse ones with King Kong and Godzilla. Like, nobody's loving what they're doing there. Universal tried to do it with the Mummy, Wolfman, and whatnot.
Yeah.
And just,
that was.
they just can't get it off the ground.
That was a car crash.
Marvel.
Remember that?
I've not seen it. I've not seen the Mummy.
I lasted 40 minutes and I had to put it off. I couldn't get through it. It was that bad. It was awful.
It's that way where if someone put it on, I would probably sit and watch it. I get weird vibes. Obviously, Tom Cruise is crazy.
Yep.
But if you put one of his films on, I always enjoy them. Like, it doesn't matter. I'm like, oh, he's a pure weirdo. And then you put a Tom Cruise film on, and I'm like, let's watch 7 Mission Impossible films. I'd be like, nah. But if you put on one Mission Impossible film after the other, I'd sit there with popcorn like, yep, these are great, like, no problem. So it has to be surprised. I have to be like, it has to be sprung
Surprise
on
Tom Cruise.
to watch a Tom Cruise film. Like the Spanish Inquisition of films.
But yeah, that's the Batman news. I don't think it matters how it's set. I guess they're probably doing this because I think they're going to do a TV, like a Gotham PD HBO Max show off the back of this. So maybe they're trying to establish it because of that. But like I said, it's funny though how like comics are obviously like infamously convoluted, and the films were like meant to be streamlined so that people that were into comics could watch them and just watch, you know, X-Men 1, X-Men 2, Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2. But at this point there's been so many Spider-Man films and Batman films, it's almost as confusing as the comics. It's quite funny.
Yeah, it's people know now. They're just like, right, okay, Spider-Man's uncle died, he became Spider-Man, like, go. Which Marvel done well the last time. Batman's parents get killed in an alleyway, he goes a little nuts, dresses up like a giant flying rodent, and, you know, fights crime. Superman's planet blows up. Everybody knows that. It's the only time you really need to do like a deep dive on it is when it's, you know, something like Guardians of the Galaxy or like Doctor Strange, where folk don't know who the hell these people are.
Yeah, like and
DC would probably be better off going with some more obscure characters like the Suicide Squad, like, I don't know, like Black Adam, like it could be great.
Yeah.
The Rock, things like that. Like, just maybe stay away from the bigger names for a little while.
Hitman was DC, wasn't it? Garth Ennis' Hitman. I'd like to see that adapted. Maybe in Vertigo, but
I'm funny on Garth Ennis.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't Vertigo.
Was it DC?
It was set in like the DCU because he meets Superman.
Yeah, and Batman. I remember a
shows
Batman
up,
comic as well
like,
that he was in.
Justice League and things like that. So like it was definitely set in the main.
I liked the Hitman books
because it came out of the big summer event where the aliens landed and like they were murdering folk, but some folk survived and got powers, and he was one of the ones that got his powers that way. A garbage crossover, but it gave us some decent stuff.
Sometimes that happens. Talking about Batman, the Long Halloween animated film has been casted, and Jensen Ackles is playing Batman.
Ackles?
Yeah, he's Batman. It's got a really good cast. David Dal.
Charismatic.
I can never say his name, but it's David Dalsmashian. It's the guy that's Polka Dot Man in the Suicide Squad movie. He's in. He's in Dark Knight stuff. He's in this. He's playing Calendar Man. He's playing Calendar Man in Long Halloween, which I think is cool casting.
Yeah, he's a really strange guy. Like, I'm sure he's not in real life, but he always portrays like real, like, kind of oddball characters. So that's a good shout. And Jensen Ackles, I've not seen him in a great deal of things. I never watched Supernatural. Like, one time I was going to start watching it and I saw there was like 20 odd seasons and I was like, it's too much, man. Like, I can't do it.
I've not watched it either.
Dude seems like quite a charismatic guy. So,
and Josh Duhamel is playing Harvey Dent. I like Josh Duhamel. I mean, he was in the Transformers films. He was one of the army guys, and he was in the recent thing with Tupac and Biggie, the TV show, Unsolved. Yeah, he's decent. So he's Harvey Dent.
I didn't watch the Tupac and Biggie thing.
Tights Welliver. Yeah, it was pretty good. It was alright. Um, Naya
He's always
Rivera's playing
good.
Catwoman.
Yeah.
Troy Baker's
I
playing
like
Joker.
Titus Welliver,
Yeah, yeah, he's a good actor. And Troy Baker played Joker
I
in
can see
the
that. Yeah.
Troy Baker played Joker in the Arkham Origins game, so I guess he's just reprising the role. But Troy Baker's got a brilliant voice, so
Didn't
sure.
play that one.
Oh, that's good. It's definitely underrated. It's not great, but it's better than the smash that it got. Like it's okay.
I thought it looked good. I mean,
Yeah,
did it come out on the PlayStation? Because I think that was the reason I didn't play it.
I did eventually, but maybe not on launch. I don't remember. Like maybe it was like packaged in as like the trilogy later or something. I don't remember, but yeah. It was okay. There was some good boss fights in it, but the gameplay itself was a bit. It was just Arkham City. It was just I think we had just had too much of it. It didn't expand enough. It was okay. I know that Ian Lynn likes it, but he's not here to defend it. So,
Yeah,
so there's been casting news as well for the Obi Wan TV show, the Obi Wan Kenobi upcoming show. And it's got a decent cast. It doesn't necessarily say who they're playing the actors, but yeah. Also, Hugh McGregor's back as Obi Wan. Hayden Christensen's back as Anakin, which I think a lot of people are excited to see, because even if it's weird that like in Hollywood, even if somebody's hated, you give it long enough, people get excited to see them back. It's strange. It's like you wait long enough and people.
Which, Jar Jar,
I think that'll take a lot longer.
like I just got to hang in there.
Yeah, just hang in there, mate. Aye.
Which I feel bad for that guy because it wasn't his fault that the character was rotten.
Yeah.
Like, he did his job. Like, he came in and did his thing and it was fine. But he got
Oh, aye. I watched the video and he was.
a lot of
He's done a video on YouTube and he talks about like all the kind of mental health issues and all the rest of it that he's had off the back of it, and abuse, and yeah, the guy's had a bit of a hard time. It's kind of shitty. Like, he's an actor. Do you know what I mean?
Well, more recently, Wyatt Russell, has he not basically shut down his social media accounts for the same
yeah,
reason?
it's ridiculous. He's getting attacked for playing Captain America. I know, it's sad, but
It's like he's playing John Walker.
Yeah.
He is a douchebag. Like, that is his whole thing. He's
Yeah.
like Marvel's version of Guy Gardner. Like,
yeah,
that is his shtick. And folk are like, oh, can't believe he's taken over from Chris Evans. Everyone loves Chris Evans. Like, folk that used to beat Chris Evans up in high school love Chris Evans. That's how fucking cool Chris Evans is. But, I think folk need to just get a grip on this whole toxic fandom thing. It's
totally.
just stupid.
It's
Unless it's Zack Snyder films, in which case it's completely different.
People like to waste a lot of their energy. Joe Egerton is back as Uncle Owen, Lars. So I like Joe Egerton. I'll take him.
Yeah, always good.
Yeah.
Like, never seen him be bad in anything, to be honest.
There's a couple of names here that I don't
And
recognise.
he's like secretly Australian.
Yeah, he's an Aussie. Yeah. There's a couple of names in the cast
So
that I don't
weird.
recognise.
Like, he's always American.
Moses Ingram, Bonnie Piesse, and Simone Kessel. I don't know who they're playing. But there's another few names that you know. I mean, Kumail Nanjiani is going to appear in it. Doesn't know indication of who he's playing, but Kumail Nanjiani, he's the kind of guy I don't mind him with small doses. After a while, he annoys me a bit. Like, I watched that, is it Stuber with Batista? After a while, he grated on me a fair amount. Like, he's okay in small doses when he's kind of like a starring role. I'm like, right, okay. Kind of like Chris Pratt, to be honest. Who else? Rupert.
Just a little goes a long way, definitely.
Yeah, or Kevin Hart. He's another one. I don't mind him in small doses, but too much is too much. Rupert Friend is going to be in it, who's like another good actor. O'Shea Jackson, Ice Cube's son. Sung Kang, the guy who played Han in Fast and Furious, and Benny Safdie, who is one of the Safdie brothers that directed like Uncut Gems and Good Time and things like that. So
Not seen it.
Uncut Gems is great. Good Time was, to me, overrated, pretentious nonsense, but I enjoyed Uncut Gems. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what he's.
Adam Sandler films I'm not really big on, so.
I don't think of it like that. It's more of a. It's an A24 like indie film.
I've heard it's more a serious thing.
Yeah, it's not like not like what was the last one I had? Hubie Halloween. Like it's it's not like that shit. Like,
more Punch Drunk Love than The Wedding Singer.
Yeah,
or whatever.
Punch Drunk Love was
Although
good.
Those are the two Adam Sandler films that I do really like.
Yeah, so that's the cast for Obi Wan. Like I said, there's no indication of who's playing who, but I'm looking forward to seeing Hayden Christensen back. Give the guy another chance. I mean, he's probably learned as an actor.
That
He's
Ewan McGregor as Obi Wan is great.
yeah, yeah. I like Ewan McGregor. Again, I don't think I'll get tired of seeing him. What I'm curious to know though is how they're going to explain how he goes from looking like Ewan McGregor, who's now 50 years old but does not look it, to looking like Alec Guinness in the space of like, is it 14 years? Like, that would be fascinating to see how they do
It's
that.
been a hard old life on Tatooine, obviously.
Apparently.
That blue milk just does nothing for you.
R.I.P. Alec Guinness. There was a trailer for The Bad Batch as well. That's an animated Star Wars series that's coming. I didn't watch it because I'm not that fussed about
Yeah.
it, but it happened. I don't know if you had any thoughts on it.
I've not seen the trailer. I'm looking forward to it because I started watching the Clone Wars on Disney Plus when that started
Right.
up. I kind of fell away from it, but I've enjoyed it. So I'd like to see something about the clones, like a rogue group of clones that don't go bad, sort of thing. Like I'll watch that. Pretty much new Star Wars content I'm all about. Like just give me it and I'll watch it.
Yeah. Well, talking about Star Wars and stuff, there's been rumours that Daisy Ridley is in talks to play Spider-Woman in the MCU.
Seen that? Mm-hmm.
She
Yeah.
was asked to comment, and I don't think she didn't really say aye or no. It says here some fans have taken her statement and assumed that she was declaring herself as a frontrunner, which Ridley has since said isn't true. I'd be fine with her as Spider-Woman. That'd be cool. I don't mind Daisy Ridley. She
Yeah.
can do the physical side of things, and yeah. I do feel like,
I mean, she's.
from what I've seen of her
I
so
enjoyed her in the Star Wars films.
I do think that Spider-Man was quite a sassy character, and I'm sure Daisy Ridley could do that. It's just something that we've not seen her do yet, but it'd be cool to see her stretch to that. You know, I mean, as much as Rey's an okay character, she's quite one note. So I would actually maybe give her a chance to show a bit more range, I think, which could be interesting.
Yeah, no, like I'll watch the hell out of it. Like again, Marvel have built up so much goodwill that they could announce Amazing Man, or that's a DC character. I'm trying to think of some like really rubbish Marvel character. Like if they were to announce
they're
Willie Lumpkin, no, the postman from Fantastic Four.
yeah.
If they were to give him a series, I'd
Yeah, I
be like,
trust you. Yeah.
I'm watching it. Of course, I'm watching it. Like, yeah, Willie Lumpkin delivering Galactus's letters or something.
Talking about casting news, the Aussie legend, depending on what side you're on, Russell Crowe has been announced to appear in Love and Thunder and Thor: Love and Thunder. I like Russell Crowe.
I did see something about that.
I know that some people don't. He's a bit of an angry old alcoholic at this point, but what Australian isn't? No, I'm up
Is he
for
not
seeing.
Kiwi?
Oh, is he Kiwi? Oh, okay.
I think
Oh,
so.
well, there you go then.
I mean, I could totally be wrong. Like,
Yeah, I think you actually might be right now that you say that. I think maybe what I'm thinking is just like he was shunned from New Zealand, and Australia was like, oh, he's not ours either. No, I like Russell Crowe. I know that he's knocked out a few paparazzis over the
if
years, but
Australia's knocking you back, you've done something wrong. Like, come on.
but yeah, no,
Not that we're better. Like, I don't mean that, but
I'll take Russell Crowe, man. I don't mind. Anybody that's punched the paparazzi in the face is alright in my book, to be honest.
it was the story about him, Reza, and Azealia Banks, and Reza are at a party in his house, and she ends up pulling a knife on someone,
Right.
and he called her the N word and like was going to kill her and stuff like that. And it was just
Whoa.
like, this is a crazy story, but it involves two completely insane people
Yeah.
and Reza, who like I mean, I don't know a lot about him other than he makes a lot of music, a lot of films, but I'd imagine he's an interesting character as well.
Yeah.
But Azealia Banks and Russell Crowe are just batshit insane,
Yeah.
so that's a recipe for disaster right away.
Definitely. Yeah, that's an interesting group of people. That. So
I mean, like, I would pay money to sit in a room with him, like no
a
question.
bag of popcorn, like, I'd just go hash it out. Yeah, there's been a trailer for the Black Widow film that dropped a couple of days ago. I didn't get a chance to watch it on the day, but I
Yeah,
watched it like just before recording there. Um, yeah, it looks good. I'm looking forward to Black Widow. That's
yeah,
something that was delayed.
more Taskmaster in this one,
Yeah,
which I'm quite excited for. Like Taskmaster is just a good villain,
yeah,
and anybody who can basically watch you do some crazy stuff and then just do it again, it's going to make for interesting fight scenes. And Marvel haven't really let me down with their action scenes in many
mhm,
films. Like I can't think of any that I've been like, oh god, this is boring. So they're always inventive and exciting to watch, which is basically what you need in an action sequence, right?
totally.
So if they get it right with Taskmaster, as long as they don't do anything stupid like kill him
Well,
off, like have him back for more
that's
fun down the line.
That's what I was just going to ask you. Like, obviously, infamously, Marvel like to do that. Like, have the villain for one film and then kill them off. In the comics, obviously, Taskmaster fights Spider-Man and he fights like all sorts of other characters. I'd like to see that. So yeah, again,
Everybody, yeah.
yeah, I hope they keep him around. There's been a kind of persistent rumor going about that Florence Pugh's character. Well, there's been two rumors about her character. One that she's going to take over as the main Black Widow because Natasha's dead
Black
in the
Widow,
main in
yeah.
the Avengers. And the other rumor is that she's going to be Taskmaster at the end. It's going to turn out that she's wearing a mask the whole time and things like that. I'd, I think I'd rather see her as the new Black Widow, but I guess a twist could be cool. I mean, I don't know how I feel about Marvel, like their big
Yeah,
twists
but
like the Mandarin and things, but it is what it is. And I trust them.
I loved the Mandarin twist. I actually loved that. Like I thought it was amazing. I thought it was so funny. If they make Florence Pugh Taskmaster this time, like rather than having her go as what we assumed was going to be the Black Widow, then I'm fine with that as well. Like, I'd like to see Scarlett Johansson come back somehow. Like I don't know how they would do it, but because I've enjoyed her in every film that she's been in for Marvel. I watched the Winter Soldier the other day,
Mm.
and she's great in it, and she's been great since Iron Man 2. So it's a shame that she's gone.
She was one character that I thought would come back. I thought that was an inevitability, but they've kept now that they've kind of brought Vision back. If they bring her back as well, it's kind of like, well, what was the point? And Loki's back, obviously in the series, so it's like, well, what was the point in killing these characters
Yeah.
in the Avengers film? Do you know what I mean? Like at that point, other than like Tony and Steve, like everybody else is just still around. um,
No, definitely.
but no, I mean,
So we're saying about villains though, like murdering villains. How good is Daniel Brühl as
yeah,
Zemo?
I'm glad he's back.
Did you watch Winter Soldier this week?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, he's amazing in it, man. See a bit in the club when he's dancing.
yeah, yeah. No, I enjoyed that. We've got a wee bit of Winter Soldier talk coming up, but I know I liked the last episode was good. It's picking up a wee bit. But in terms of the Black Widow, it's a film again. We were talking earlier about films that are delayed and have lost momentum. I don't know if it's just because it's the next MCU film, but I'm still just as excited, even though it's been delayed. I'm like, yes, I'm still up for this. I still want to see this.
20, 22 films in. This is the 23rd or something like that. Like
Yeah,
they've built up the goodwill that they could probably have not have another film until next year, and I'd still be like,
I do think they were very fortunate
just
with the
I'm
timing.
always desperate for the next Marvel film.
The timing of Disney Plus has kind of carried them through the lockdown quite well because it means that we've still had shows like WandaVision and Falcon to keep us going. When there's been obviously no films coming out, so
Definitely.
that's kind of they've been quite lucky, I think, with that. You know, having that ready in time. It's been kind of yeah. And
Aye,
other Marvel news.
worked out perfectly.
Another Marvel news: John Romita Jr. is back at Marvel, working for Marvel, drawing Marvel books. How do you feel about John Romita Jr., Alan?
Right, when I first really started getting into the X Men
Uh
and
huh.
whatnot, it was Jim Lee's time, but I then went back and bought as many cheap back issues as I could. So you're going back to like the early 200s, which was John Romita's time to shine, and absolutely loved it. Also, early 90s, you had Daredevil Man Without Fear with him and Frank Miller, which he drew action like you felt the punches in those films because everything's so chunky, and I absolutely loved his work. But when he moved over to DC, I think his style has changed. I can't say in exactly like what way it's changed, but like most artists obviously evolve over time. and I'm not as big a fan now. Like I've seen some of the abuse that he takes on like Twitter and things like
Yeah.
that, and not him personally, but his work.
Yeah.
And I feel bad because I love, like, I'm a massive fan of his older stuff, but not such a great fan of his more recent style.
Uh,
A bit like Neil Adams or like Frank Miller. Frank
oh,
Miller could draw like nobody else back in the day, and just as it's went on, it's not for me.
horrific.
What about yourself?
In terms of Romita,
Well,
when people kind of tell me that, you know, as you're saying, like people say, no, Romita, his art's crappy and it's blocky, and I always say, well, what about Man Without Fear? That's always my kind of argument. I love the art in that book. But in terms of his more recent stuff, I just, it's, I've seen, I've got an Avengers book that he drew, and I've got a few others. I think I've got a Fantastic Four book that he worked on, and I'm just not a fan. And then he drew Kick-Ass as well with Mark Miller, and I just,
yeah,
I don't like I don't like his faces. I don't like the way he does emotion, and he draws like features. I don't like his poses. I feel like the characters when they're posing, they always look like action figures. They don't look like real people, and I don't know. I just, other than like
little stiff, yeah.
what you're saying about like Man Without Fear, I feel like that book had a real flow to it. Like there's a I think there's a double page towards the end of the book that shows Daredevil in full costume swinging like across a kind of 2 page spread, and it looks so dynamic and so, like, you know, the flow is brilliant, and it's kind of sad because it's like that's what that guy can do, and now he's drawing, I don't know, these kind of blocky action figure looking characters. It's just, yeah, it's not the same.
It just seems to be the way. Like, I don't think there's a better artist than Neil Adams. Like from like the late '60s or early '70s, whenever he really came into his own, until I don't know, maybe early '90s. Like, guy was phenomenal, but like now, I don't really like his stuff. John Byrne, the same, from like the late '70s up until, again, probably late '80s, early '90s. You couldn't touch him. Like, absolutely amazing stuff.
I do
Over time,
think though,
they kind of evolve their style, and I'm just not into it.
you touched on the abuse that Romita Jr takes online, and I do think, as much as I'm not a fan of his sort of more recent stuff, he's not like Rob Liefeld. Like, I feel like people do need to rein it in a wee bit. He's there's worse artists out there than John Romita.
Yeah. That is like 1991. I was 13, so that's probably like I had a paper round. I was making like a lot of money for a 13-year-old, so I was going to the comic shop and I was buying everything.
Right.
And like, you know, it was like the New Mutants, which then became X-Force, which like didn't last that long until he jumped ship onto like Youngblood and whatnot. And, you know, 13, 14, 15-year-old Alan wasn't. He was like, oh, look, this is cool. As Alan got a little bit older, and I'm going to stop talking about him in the third person now because this is weird. As I got a little bit older, I was just like, this is just absolute garbage. But I kind of felt that way about most of the Image guys. Like, controversially, don't really think that much of Jim Lee. Like, I love his covers, but interiors, I just find it all to be too posed, too stiff. Everybody looks
I love Jim Lee,
they
so
all look
that's
as if they're
interesting.
standing there like. No, like most folk do. Like, it's if you give me a choice of Lees, I'm taking Jay. Like, he is by far the more interesting artist to me. But it's, you know, obviously it's subjective, right? Like, everybody has their own like stuff that they're drawn to. I like mine a little bit more messy, a little bit more I don't know, sketchy or scratchy, a little bit more interesting.
What
Jim Lee's is just too clean for me.
the name has escaped me, but the guy that drew the Berserker comic with Keanu, his artwork kind of has that feel to it.
Oh, Ron
That's going to bother me.
Ron Garney.
Yes, Rob Garney. Yeah,
Ron
his
Garney,
artwork has that
yeah.
kind of sketchy feel to it, and I really like that. To be fair, I like his work.
Yeah, but I love his stuff. Like, he'd done one with Jason Aaron a few years back. Oh my god, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's a really good book, and just the guy's art is great. It's like, Jim Lee is obviously extremely talented. I'm not saying he's bad. Like, please don't think that. It's just, it's not really my cup of tea. He has consistently been an amazing cover artist. He can't handle a monthly book, and if you can't do like a schedule, I don't think you get any business taking on like a book unless it's agreed beforehand that you're going to get ahead of it or whatever, because once you start hitting those delays, people lose interest. People like me with
Yeah.
ADD or whatever, ADHD. But
Especially,
like
especially at that level as well.
Just
like it's not like he's working just for weekend at indie Diddy Comics. He's working for fairly major companies on fairly major series. So get your shit together.
Yeah, absolutely.
The
stuff that he created as well, Wildcats and whatnot, like most of the time it wasn't that interesting, but when he had was it Scott Lobdell that was writing it and Travis Charest was drawing it, like that was an interesting time. Alan Moore wrote it for a little bit, so obviously it's just I don't think much of him as a writer, and I don't love his art, so I've never really saw what the fuss was about.
Wildstorm.
Anyway, let's not shit all over Jim Lee.
Wildstorm was all Jim Lee into it as well. That was an interesting side project, for better or worse.
Aye.
So we reviewed, somebody on the site, I think it was Ben, reviewed the first issue of the Marvel's Alien book that came out recently. There was also supposed to be a Predator comic coming out, but it's been delayed. Just talk about comic delays. There's not been a reason given yet. I'm trying to see if there's another date for it, but it doesn't seem like there is. So yeah, I guess we'll get the Predator.
No, I think it's been postponed indefinitely.
That sucks. Yeah, hopefully we'll get news on that at some point. I mean, I'm not mad on a Predator comic, but it's sad to see a comic delayed regardless, to be honest.
Yeah.
I
read some of the Dark Horse stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed some of it. Some of it wasn't great. I love like the first two Predator films, and some of the other ones have their moments as well. But I'm excited the fact that Marvel got it, because I knew they would put top tier folk on it. And is it Philip? What's his name again? Philip Kennedy Johnson, who's writing Superman just now. That guy's great, and also the artist on Alien, Salvador LaRocca, who again, like, I love some of his stuff, and some of it it does nothing for me. I love the xenomorphs in this book, like, and that is the most important thing when you're doing an Alien book, is do the aliens look cool?
Totally.
The aliens look cool as hell. These people sometimes look a little bit plastic to me, a little bit kind of rubbery. I mean, it's amazing work, but it's just not really the kind of thing that usually floats my boat. So it's all a bit too... Who was the company that did the Garth Ennis one with the zombies? Not zombies, but they're infected. Is it Crossed?
Yeah, Crossed. Yeah.
Yeah, the company that did that, like, they had a kind of house style.
Yeah.
Which this, like, Salvador LaRocca stuff always reminds me of.
Right.
And I'm not big on it. It's like the colouring is just a bit weird, and the people all look kind of the same and plasticky. But yeah, it's good art. It's just not my particular cup of tea.
I think this is the last piece of Marvel news. I don't know if you played the Avengers game. I've not played it yet. But apparently Ultron could be coming to it. Apparently there's been a leak that's saying that Ultron is the next sort of the next character to be added to the Avengers game. Cool. I don't care, but cool.
That way, like, when the game was announced, I was like, oh, okay, it was it's Square Enix, isn't it?
Yeah, Square Enix.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm not the biggest Final Fantasy fan. I'm not the biggest, like, Japan RPG fan at all, JRPG fan at all, but I was going to give it a go because it's the Avengers and I like my Marvel comics. But by the time it came out, I just thought, I don't know if this is for me, and I've not read too many great reviews of it, so I'll probably play it when it comes on PS Plus in like a year or two.
Which it probably will. Yeah. I was I was disappointed when I saw the trailers for it because again, like you, when it was announced, I was like, "Oh, this is good," because it seemed like for years, obviously Marvel, we'd seen what Star Wars did with Dice, with how they gave like Dice all the license to do all the Star Wars games, and they made like two broken games in the space of about 6 years, and now the license is like reverted back. But with Marvel, it seemed like they were actually going to go and get developers that want to make a story with a certain character and just kind of let them have free reign, because that's what they did with Spider-Man. They gave Insomniac the rights to Spider-Man and said, put your own spin on it, give us your own story, and that was a brilliant game. There's also a review for that on the website,
Yeah.
and yeah, I thought they were doing the same with Square Enix. I thought they were going to be like, yeah, here you go, like make us a good story, and instead Square Enix came up with like a microtransaction games as a service type deal. Recommended to play it in co-op, and just all the phrases that you don't want to hear at like a video game keynote. And
No.
then the trailers came out, and they all had this weird like discount. It looked like, you know how back in the day when your dad would get you the figure that actually looked like Iron Man, and your mum would get you the knockoff one because you didn't know any better, and it doesn't look quite right. That's like the Avengers cast, and in this movie it's strange. Yeah, I don't know. I watched the trailers and I was like, I'm going to wait for this to get better, because I did hear they were going to be adding stuff, and they've added Hawkeye and they've added some other things to it. We'll leave it alone and see where it
Yeah.
goes. I think because Battlefront 2, top of Star Wars games, Battlefront 2 when it came out was garbage, and then eventually that's now a really good game because of what they've added to it. So hopefully Avengers will go the same
I,
way. But
I thought the first one was garbage. I thought the first Battlefield was garbage as well. I bought it. I was so excited for it, but the fact that they didn't have like the proper people doing the voices, like just instantly, like kind of was jarring. The fact that they had like all the proper noises for the blasters and stuff, like it sounded like Star Wars
yeah,
up until Darth Vader opened his mouth, and then you're like, you couldn't have got somebody that could do a decent James Earl Jones impersonation. Like, come on. Uh, I just I just didn't enjoy it. I'm looking forward to like if they do something more Knights of the Old Republic
uh huh,
style game. Like I'm looking forward to that because that's more my jam. Like I like a single player where I can just lose myself in it for like ever. Like The Witcher 3, Skyrim, like all these type of games. Like I've went back and I've played a million times. Sometimes you don't even bother with the main story. You just go off and do random crazy stuff.
yeah.
Like that's what I want to see rather than you know some stupid third person shooter.
See,
Like it's just never been my thing. So
I'm normally totally the same. I would agree with you in general. Like I prefer story-based games. I prefer single-player games. I play some online, but for the most part, I prefer to just sit myself, put my earphones on, and just disappear into a game. That's my kind of ideal experience. But and then when who was it? Was it Respawn that announced that did the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order game? Which, do you know what?
yeah, uh-huh.
I was so disappointed in that game. I don't know what I thought it was going to be, but it wasn't that. Again, there's a review for that on the website where it kind of goes into more of my thoughts. But all through that game, I didn't think you felt powerful at all. You felt like you didn't feel like you had a lightsaber. You felt like you had a big stick that you were just hitting people with, until they went down. You didn't feel powerful at all. You always felt outmatched in every fight. And in Star Wars, Jedi's are supposed to be the most powerful character. You also had a really whiny main character.
To be fair, he was an apprentice. But
I know, but I get what they were doing, but I don't know. I just never felt like I get that what was it called, the Force Awakens games, where like you were very overpowered, but at least it felt like what being a
yeah,
Jedi would be.
pulling down star destroyers and
Yeah,
stuff like
like
that.
that kind of stuff should be like, I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't love the Star Wars game. So in my review, I think there's actually a part where I say it's a bad day where when EA's multiplayer shooter feels more like a Star Wars game than this single player experience. Because like I don't know, there were certain parts in it you were fighting witches and you were fighting. It was just a weird game. I didn't enjoy it at all. But I was the minority on that. Most people
I
did.
liked it okay. I didn't love it, but I enjoyed it.
Mm. Another game news, there's been a patch for Cyberpunk that was announced and came out. It was a pretty big patch, it was like 40 gigs or so. I downloaded it and honestly haven't noticed any difference. It's just the same. The police don't seem to
I've been so excited for that game for obviously as long as everyone else has been excited for that
Yeah.
game, and had pre-ordered it and
Right.
everything. A month before it came out, I cancelled my pre-order. Nothing to do with like not being excited for the game. I was just a bit skint, and I was like, no,
Ah.
I won't bother. I'll wait and get it like once it's actually came out. And since it's come out, and I think a lot of the people whining about it are being probably overly harsh. Not having played it yet, you've played it, you'll know better than me. But I think a lot of people are just being way too critical of CD Projekt Red because what they've done previously. I think they've earned a little bit of goodwill, but rushing the game to come out, like obviously it wasn't ready, and they'd committed, and then it was delayed, and then it got delayed again. So they were obviously under pressure to get it done and put it out. I've just kind of like not been motivated enough to go out and actually buy it and play it. Again, it will probably come out for like 15, 20 quid in a few years' time, and I'll pick it up and I'll go, it's alright, but I was ridiculously excited, and now I just don't really
Yeah,
care.
I agree to some extent about what you're saying about the outcry. I played it on. I'm playing it on. I don't have a PS5 yet because they're like gold dust. So I'm playing it on PS4. And the big thing,
Yeah,
everybody's saying if you're playing it on last gen, it's unplayable. It's not unplayable. It's crashed maybe twice, possibly three times on me, where I've had to like reset the console. Other than that, it's just like some cosmetic glitches, glitching through walls, glitching, NPCs glitching and things like that. It's not unplayable,
yeah,
but
things that
I
happen.
think though what you were saying about pre-ordering it and then cancelling it and things like that, I do think somebody said to me when I was buying it, my mate said to me who'd already played it because I got it at Christmas and he got it on launch. He was like, "Mate, I would wait because eventually this will be a good game," and I'm going like, "Aye, but how long is that going to take?" And I do think eventually, if you're waiting to play it, that's possibly the best way to get the best experience. But if you're waiting for it to be sort of playable and better, this update isn't it. Like this update that they've announced, it's slightly better. The police aren't as like broken, and there are certain parts of the game that play a bit smoother, but it's still not perfect. So if you're waiting for it to be, what you were sort of expecting it to be, then keep waiting. It's not there yet.
Speaking of police, I've heard that like, for a game which is called Cyberpunk, in which you're supposed to be this street level gangster or whatever. Do you do a lot of bounties in the game for the police? Like, is that like a big part of it?
Not really. There's some side missions you can do
Yeah.
with certain members of the police, but like I was playing the other night, I was doing some mission with a detective guy, but him and his partner, his partner's like by the book, and he's like, you can't use I think you're called an edge runner or some shit in the game, and the partner's like, you can't use an edge runner for a official mission, and his partner's like, I can do what I want, so the partner walks away, and then you work with the kind of the kind of bent cop to sort of catch this serial killer. It's it's okay. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to do a review for Cyberpunk eventually when I finish it, but it feels I'm quite hollow on it right now. It's still not. I'm nearly at the end of the game, and it's still not kind of worked its way into my heart. It's still okay. Um,
Which considering the excitement for it beforehand, is a bad sign,
yeah,
is
a
it?
bit disappointing. The PS Plus games for April have been announced. And this month we are getting an Oddworld game for PS5, Oddworld Soulstorm, and on PS4 we're getting Days Gone and Zombie Army 4. Days Gone's okay, especially for free. It's another zombie game, but it's alright.
I bought it, started playing it, was bored out of my mind, and sold it pretty quickly. Like
Yeah,
I wasn't into it at all. I found just the controls and whatnot. I was just like, like I
I thought it was
try to
okay.
jump on my bike or try like murder folk
Mm,
when the bike's there, and like you accidentally like keep jumping on it and getting ripped apart by these zombies, and it's
the thing about it for
just wasn't
me,
getting it.
I went straight from what was I playing before? I was playing something that was really quite polished beforehand, and then I played Days Gone, and it
Last of Us Two.
Aye, that spot on. That's exactly what I was playing. I went from Last of Us 2 to
That's
Days.
that's what I did as well.
Yeah, and see going from that like really smooth cinematic experience to Days Gone, it's so stoppy and starty, and there's so many loading screens,
Jarring. Yeah.
and there's so like see the cutscenes, the cam at the end of the cutscene, right? The camera pans around behind the character into third person view, and you're like, oh, I can start playing it, and then it fades to black, and then comes back in, and you're like, oh, that's just totally broke the immersion. Like, why can you not just float right in the way that games like
Aye.
Last of Us can or Uncharted? It's just, it's okay. It was a really it was a real slog as well. See at the end, I mean that's about like a 30, 40 hour game. It has no business being that long. There's not that much to do in it, and it really feels dragged out towards the end.
Nah.
But yeah,
Obviously, you and me have a difference of opinion on The Last of Us Part 2. Like, for me, I think that game is maybe the best game I've ever played. Like, I loved it that much. I went from that to Days Gone, and I'd been obviously online just kind of, you know me, I like an argument.
hmm
Winding people up on Facebook and Twitter and whatnot about The Last of Us Part 2 and seeing folk going, garbage game, nowhere near as good as Days Gone, and I was like, oh, I'm quite excited to play Days Gone now because I'm seeing all this
yeah,
real love for it out
that's a
there.
weird
And I
comparison.
played it and I couldn't have been more disappointed.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
it,
Ghost of Tsushima. I could see why folk were getting excited for. I didn't love it. I liked it, but I could see why folk were more up for that
yeah.
one.
I loved Ghost of
But
Tsushima. I mean, some people are kind of. I've heard that a few times. One of my mates actually was a bit disappointed with Ghost of Tsushima, but I really enjoyed it. But yeah, with what you said about Last of Us, it's not. My problem with that game isn't like the production or the acting or the CGI animation. All that's incredible. Like the presentation of Last of Us is impeccable. The voice acting is some of the best I've ever seen in a game. So I agree with you from that perspective. Like going from a game that's so polished and so kind of well produced to Days Gone was hard. And not only that, I went from Last of Us to Days Gone, right, to Ghost of Tsushima, which again really polished, produced, well acted, well shot, well written, and then to Cyberpunk, which again are very unpolished and broken. So it's as if I'm kind of going like that recently with every game that I play. So yeah.
aye, you're going from like PS4 to Nintendo, like original
Well,
Nintendo, almost like that far
I don't
back.
want to spoil too much of my Cyberpunk review, but that's kind of how I would sum up Cyberpunk. It feels like, remember in the PS2 the PS2 days, you would get these kind of mid-tier games that weren't like full price games, and they were these kind of obscure sci-fi. Like they felt a bit cheap, but they were all right. That's what Cyberpunk is, but it's a
Mm,
triple A game starring Keanu Reeves. It's weird, but that's the kind of feel that you get from it.
that is that is disappointing, man. Like,
Huh. Um, there's been a ton of delays. I wrote an article for the website about how the Resident Evil movie has been delayed. That was coming out on the 24th of November. Sorry, that is when it's now coming out. I don't actually know if I put in the article when it was originally coming out. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so it was coming out September 3rd. It's now coming out on November 24th. It's not the only film to be delayed. It follows Mortal Kombat, which
no.
was pushed back from April 16th to a week later in April 23rd, and Venom, which has also been delayed. Venom is now coming out on September 24th. And the Uncharted movie has
And
also.
that way, like,
I'm just going to say the Uncharted movie has also
sorry,
been
carry on.
delayed.
Uncharted and Resident Evil are the only two that I'm really bothered about there. Like, the Mortal Kombat film, as long as the action's good,
Mm.
I'll watch it. Like, I don't think I've seen a Mortal Kombat film before now, because I never really played the games. I've seen a whole bunch of Street Fighter films and stuff like that, and they're all
Yeah.
garbage. Like, bar none. So I'm not really got high hopes for it. The Venom film, like if that never comes out, like I don't think I'll be bothered. The original one or the first one, sorry, was just a big load of nothing really, wasn't it? Like it was
Yeah.
Tom Hardy doing a funny voice again. Like that guy loves a stupid voice. Like I don't know
Yeah, it does.
what someone told him that that's a cool thing, and he just seems to do it all the time now. Like
Um,
Mad Max Fury
yeah.
Road, I'm so glad it focused on Charlie Theron, like rather than him. So
I like Tom Hardy. And there's a review on the website for Venom as well.
I like him as well. Yeah, I like Tom Hardy. Like I'm not slagging Tom Hardy. Like I do think he's a good actor and whatnot. Like he's done some really great stuff. But I just wish he would stop doing crazy voices.
Yeah.
Like
Oh no, I
I
agreed.
know you're not American, dude, so you have to do an American accent. But Does it have to be something like he always has to do some crazy
Yeah,
like affectations
yeah,
on it as well, and it's
yeah,
just
like
like
Lawless
no
and
need, man, no
Bane
need.
and
Benedict Cumberbatch, yeah, and Lawless. I ain't dancing for you too. It's just like yeah, like come on, just tone it down a wee bit, man. Like you're a good actor, you don't need that crap.
yeah, and Uncharted is also going to be delayed. But see, to be honest with these films, we're in lockdown anyway. I think people just want stuff to watch. But yeah, they've been delayed. It is
Yeah,
what it is. I'm not. Most of them are just a week. Like I think Mortal Kombat's a week delay, and I think Venom's the same. So we can live for a week, I'm sure. Some of them are a bit longer.
yeah,
But yeah, it's not that big a deal. So the next piece
yeah.
of
I've
news,
waited this long for Black Widow, so like that's fine.
yeah, Netflix are making moves. I mean, also Netflix have really capitalised on I think the whole lockdown thing because theaters aren't open, so everybody's watching Netflix. Netflix has paid $450 million for the rights to the Knives Out sequels, which is crazy.
Yep,
Um,
which was oh, how good was Knives Out though? Like what a film! That was amazing. So the
Knives,
fact that they're doing more with James Bond, what's his name?
Daniel Craig.
Daniel Craig. Like I'm delighted with that because silly accent, a good silly accent. No, loved it.
Guess what? I didn't love Knives Out. um,
Oh
it was
really?
it was okay, but it just I think I've really built up my head. I'd watched the trailers and I was like, oh, this looks amazing. I like kind of murder mystery things, and it looked like it had a bit of kind of humour in it. And I love the cast: Chris Evans, Tony Collette, all these brilliant actors, Lakeith
Yeah,
Stanfield. And then
Jamie Lee Curtis.
yeah, and then I saw it and I was just a bit let down. It was okay, it was fine. I thought it was going to be really something special, and it was just okay. I didn't love it. But I liked it enough that I will see these sequels and I'll give it another chance. It was okay, just overrated. I felt.
For 400 million, Netflix are praying that you do.
I know that's crazy money, isn't it? I don't know.
It's insane. I mean, the original one cost 40 million or something. Like it was reasonably cheap. Like
Right.
with that cast, I don't know how, but
Yeah.
it made a lot of money. So I don't know.
There's been a new trailer dropped for The Handmaid's Tale season 4. I don't know if you are into The Handmaid's Tale.
I've not seen the trailer. Oh, love the Handmaid's Tale. Yep, big fan. I've not seen the new trailer though.
The new trailer looks great, and I'm very, very excited. I love that show. Um, we've watched it since the start, and I
Yep.
think it's really underrated. I think it's one of the best shows on TV. I think the way it's shot, I think it's so well acted, it's so well written. Yeah, I'm very, very much looking forward to season 4.
Yeah. What is her name? The lead actress? I can never remember.
Elizabeth
It's
Moss.
terrible. Elizabeth Moss, right? Also in the kind of Tom Cruise category of as a Scientologist, which kind of puts me off. But she is absolutely
Incredible.
brilliant. Like I've never seen her be bad in anything. She done one recently where she was played Shirley Jackson, like the woman who wrote The Haunting of Hill
I've not
House.
watched it, but it looks good.
It was just amazing.
Uh,
Oh, so good, man! Absolutely loved it. And it's all her.
right.
Like the rest of the cast are good, but like she is just magnetic. Like every time I see her in
Uh-huh.
anything, I always find her just to be like hypnotic almost. Like you can't stop watching her. She's so good. And Handmaid's Tale, for whatever reason, I didn't start watching it until season 3 had finished,
Right.
and then I just watched it all in pretty much like one go,
Hmm.
and read the book, bought the sequel, which I've not read yet, the Testaments.
Yeah.
But I really looking forward to season 4 of that. Like it's such a good show.
Yeah. What's weird though to me about Elizabeth Moss? Obviously, she's a Scientologist. This this show and book, it's to me, Gilead is very similar to Scientology. It's not that far off what Scientologists
Yeah,
kind of write about and talk about, and it's like, how in the church were you doing this? How does that? Was there a conversation there, or like, how did that happen?
as long as there's money coming
I
in,
guess,
I don't think they care about anything else.
yeah,
It's a religion in name only. Like it's It's there to make money, and that's what it does, and it does it very, very well.
Yeah,
So
you're probably
everything
right.
else is, you know,
I feel like you should have a spin off. You should have a
rebels.
spin off conspiracy podcast, Alan. I'd listen to
Oh, dude, I would love that.
that. We need to pitch that to Ian. Um, so there's been a trailer and a release date dropped for Rick and Morty season 5. Um, it has
Yeah,
been unveiled that it's going to come out in June. And it was really quite funny because the way they announced it was you can now start asking us about season 6 because that's all they get is when's the next season coming out. So yeah, I thought it was quite funny. Um, some
yeah,
people I think feel like Rick and Morty's lost its magic a wee bit, and it's kind of been ruined by the fan community, etc. I still enjoy it. It's not. It's maybe not as great as maybe I think the first couple of seasons were something special. Seasons 3 and 4 were okay, but I'll stick with it. I enjoy the show.
yeah. I've not seen all of season 4. Like, I think they started putting on, like, I think the first 3 or 4 episodes came on Channel 4,
Yeah,
and then they just stopped for
right.
a while. And so I kind of, like I was saying earlier on, with comics with a delay or films or whatnot, sometimes you just forget about it, lose interest.
Yeah,
So my mate said to me that he went back to the start just recently and started watching season 1, and he's going to watch all the way up to, like, season 4 for season 5 coming out. And I was like, I'll need to do that as well, because the first couple of seasons, as you say, were just absolutely phenomenal. Like, just some of the funniest stuff I've ever
yeah,
seen. The toxic fans is just like, just please stop, man. Like, no one thinks you are interesting or clever or funny just by belittling other folk because they don't get it. Like,
yeah,
some folk like it, some folk don't. Like, don't worry about it.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it's funny. Um, Another show I started watching and I feel like really lost its way over time was the American Gods TV show. I loved the first season of American
same.
Gods, watched some of season 2 and fell away. But I got a third season and it's since been
Exactly the
cancelled.
same.
It's been cancelled. There's not going
Yeah.
to be a season 4,
Like,
so
that was one of my favourite books.
yeah,
One of my favourite books. Like, I remember picking it up in the airport one time and it was just like, better than Stephen King or Your Money Back. And it's like, oh, it's written by Neil Gaiman, who wrote one of my favourite comics of all time. And so I was like, cool. Read it in pretty much like one sitting, like on holiday. I just sat and devoured the whole thing. I think I've read it like I don't know how many times now.
yeah.
Bought the comics when they came out there. Was so excited for the TV show, and then it was just like the first season was good.
Hmm.
The second season, I don't think I even finished
Yeah,
it.
me
Like,
too.
I certainly didn't get very far.
Yeah, I dropped off during season 2. I mean, it's always kind of sad to see a series getting cancelled, but like we're saying, it kind of had lost its way. I feel I don't know how many people are going to be
Yeah,
that broken up by it, because I feel like it did kind of lose its way towards the end.
I see. Like, they got to the point where they get to the town where the kids are going missing, and Shadows like starts helping out with the police chief and whatnot, and that was like my favourite bit in the book, and they didn't seem to hit it right. Like, this is, I don't think I got very far into that season like at all, because they were just really messing that up, and I was like, I don't know if I can be doing this anymore.
Yeah,
So that's what made me stop. Because
yeah,
that bit was in the book was perfect. It was just a small kind of, like, it would be a side quest if it was a computer game, like, to go down that route, and it was just a really interesting part of the book, but it wasn't the main
hmm
focus, and they just really kind of fucked with it for no reason. And
yeah.
I was just like, but
We've
that
been
was that was all I had to say about
we've
it.
been going for just over an hour, so I feel like we've probably covered all the news that we need to cover. I would like just to point listeners and viewers towards the website at this point. And there's been a few reviews that went up this week that I feel like have been quite good. So head on over to Big Glasgow Comic page. I personally have went back and reviewed Nier Automata because there's a new Nier game coming out. I went back and reviewed New Avengers Breakout, which was in the works for a while. That book struggled to get through it. Hadn't aged as well as I thought it would. We also got a review of Godzilla
Yeah,
vs Kong Up and a few others. So yeah, Also, there was a quiz put out the other day by myself, a PlayStation quiz. So go and do that, have a go, see how you do. But yeah, I feel like that's all the kind of housework done. So we're going to move on to our topic for the week, which is where you should start reading a comic as a sort of first timer, somebody that's new to the medium. I've got some notes, but I think Alan's been reading some comics in preparation, so I don't know if you want to take it away and let us know where you reckon we should start. I mean, we put a poll
No,
out, and I think it was All Star Superman that won the poll, which is a great place to start. But we'll
yeah,
get into all of that as we go.
yeah. The poll had All Star Superman, Batman Year One, and I'm trying to remember what the third one was. I don't have my computer open in front of me. I read both Batman Year One and All Star Superman, and I couldn't be more like love one and really dislike the other. Like All Star Superman could be anybody's first comic
Mhm.
because it's that good. Like it's you've got a guy who is at the top of his game in Grant Morrison who knows the character, loves the character, and is quite happy to embrace like all the really silly parts of it. Like Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen was, not quite as ridiculous as he was in his Silver Age and Golden Age appearances, but he is still really silly, but is still a major character in it. You've got Frank Quitely, who I don't think has been better than that,
Mm.
except maybe in one of the other books I'm going to talk about. But both of them just completely in the top of their game. Obviously, when it was coming out at the time, Frank Quitely is notoriously bad at bringing stuff out on a monthly schedule. Which if it's that pretty, you'll wait for it, right? But this was me just finally reading the final issue. Like I was buying it month on month or however long the delays were, and never actually read issue 12. Like for whatever reason, it just get put in a pile and eventually tidied away. Finished it, and it's a perfect comic book. Like it's got all the stuff that I love. Superman being like a big klutz as Clark Kent, but also being just like the perfect superhero as Kal-El Superman. Lois Lane is just the perfect Lois Lane. She is putting herself in ridiculous situations just to get to talk to Superman for 2 minutes. It's perfect. Lex Luthor is a big crazy science genius who is just so blinded by his hatred for Superman that he doesn't even notice that he's talking to him for half of the book when he's talking to Clark Kent and stuff. It's perfect. It's such a good book.
Um,
What was your thoughts on
All
Superman?
Star Superman made my list. The way I done it, this is an article by the way that I wrote a couple of years ago, and it was each character. I kind of done it by character, where to jump in for this character and that character. So for Superman, I
Yeah.
All Star Superman was on my list. What I said about it was All Star Superman is a good jumping in point. You can read this story with no previous knowledge of the character and still have a good level of comprehension as to what's going on. And as you said, it introduces kind of the themes of the character well and things like that. So I don't think it's a bad place to start. Um, the other Superman book
Definitely.
that I've included is For All Seasons, which is a brilliant story. It's done by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale.
Is that Mark Wade?
No, Jeff Loeb.
Oh right, yeah. I've not actually read that one.
It's great.
I've not read that one.
Yeah, what I said about that, it's another great Superman story chronicling the formative years of Clark Kent from Smallville as they became the Man of Steel of Metropolis. It's an intimate tale told over the course of a year in Superman's early days, given to us by the team of Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. Yeah, it's probably my favourite Superman story. I mean, I love Loeb and Sale. I think they're incredible. And For All Seasons is great.
They've done some really good work together.
Yes,
Like, no
Spider-Man,
question, man. Like,
Spider-Man Blue and
there's
Long Halloween.
Spider-Man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I've never read Long Halloween. Like
Wow.
it's one I've never actually read. It's
I would.
I know. I'm not a big Batman fan. Like
I know, but the thing, Long Halloween, it's more than a Batman story. I think it's more kind of about Gotham rather than Batman. And it's the storytelling as well is to be appreciated.
oh, like
It's brilliant.
I've always wanted to read it. Like I almost bought the Absolute edition, like at 80 quid or whatever,
Yeah.
just because I was so into reading it. But it's just one of those ones that is never, the stars have never aligned. But like they're a really good combo, the two together. So it's always fun to read what they do.
I read The Long Halloween every year. Every October I dig out The Long Halloween and read it, and then in November I read V for Vendetta. I've just always done it. Since I
Nice
first read them.
tradition.
Yeah. But For All Seasons is a great book as well. You should put that on your list. So let's talk about
I
Batman.
definitely
Let's.
will. Like
I was just going to say let's go into Batman because you mentioned Year One, and I take it you're not a fan of that book.
yeah, I used to love it until I read it the other day, and it's just got most of the stuff that I find problematic with Frank Miller's work. Like I just
For
the
me,
very first couple of pages, whereas
reading it recently, it's some of the
yeah,
dialogue that hasn't aged too well. You know, like when you read it, I think in the context of that story, it's okay. But see if you read it out loud, it sounds really dumb. When he's like kicking the tree down and stuff, like some of the dialogue just doesn't read very natural. I don't think.
yeah, aye. There's a like I don't know. The version I got of it was like a kind of the hardcover version, which was pretty
Uh huh.
cool. Like I always liked it. So I'm reading it again, and it's got the bit at the start where it's like Slam Bradley, some scummy paparazzi type reporter, writing his like little news piece called The Crime Blotter, and there's like somebody gets gang raped, and it's just like, dude, it's a Batman story.
Mm.
Like just you don't need to write it all like it's some hard boiled detective fiction. Like, and if you are doing that, tone it down a wee bit. There's no need. But the
Um.
first couple of pages, January 4th, and it's Gordon is coming in on the train from Chicago, and he's like, what is it? Barbara's flying in. I don't care how much it costs. Train's no way to come to Gotham. In an airplane from above, all you'd see are the streets and buildings, fool you into thinking it's civilized, and then it cuts to the airplane, and you've got Bruce Wayne on it, and he's like, I've not got the. I should have taken the train. I should be closer. I should see the enemy. So it's almost like poor people are the enemy here. Do you know what I mean? Like I actually hated it from the first page. I was like, no, like this is just absolute nonsense. And maybe you could argue it's year one, so he's going to learn over the course of the story and whatnot. But it started off in a bum note for me, and it kind of just went from there. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff, like the bit where he's kicking the tree and whatnot is just garbage, and then it's a bit where it's like she knew how to wear heels. It's like a lost art. And it's just like this is just written like as if it's by some complete scummy old perv, which I kind of get the feeling that Frank Miller might just be. David Mazzucchelli's fantastic. Like I love the art, but I just couldn't be doing with a lot of the ideas behind it. It was clear that at this point he's obviously been mugged and has gone down his kind of increasingly more fascistic
Paranoid.
take on life, which just does nothing for me.
I think
But that's just me.
I'm going to. Well, I was going to say I'm going to defend it. I'm going to say, and if you're jumping into a new book, I do think it's kind of like the Genesis part of the Bible. You know, it's the ultimate origin story, and the fact that it tells this story of him, his kind of first few nights as Batman, and it shows you him doing things wrong. He's not thinking things through. He's not able to think on his feet. The way he is later on. I appreciated that. Kind of making him this more relatable guy. And I obviously enjoy the artwork. There's a lot of iconic moments, like the moment he walks into all the gangsters and he's like, "Gotham isn't yours anymore. It's mine now," basically. There's some iconic scenes from the book, and I actually don't mind the Gordon Batman parallel. I quite enjoyed that way of storytelling. I don't mind what you're saying about being a hard boiled kind of detective book. I kind of like seeing both sides of it,
Oh
because Gordon to me is a fascinating character as
no, no,
well.
like
So
I prefer Batman's supporting cast, so the fact that it's I'd say 60-40, maybe even more in
Mhm.
Gordon's favour for most of the story is perfect. But it's just like really on the very first page of the story, you're talking about somebody being gang raped, and it's just like it's Batman, dude. Like it's
I,
not Sin City. Like you weren't there yet. You weren't at Sin City.
yeah.
You don't need to put that in a Batman comic. It's just it's completely unnecessary. There's a bit as well where the guy who ends up testifying against Glass, the detective that Gordon's partnered with at
Yeah.
first, the black dude, and the obviously dodgy lawyer is going, don't be dressing like a pimp, like none of that stuff, and it's just like Frank Miller is just so like reactionary, like just
I,
borderline, like just almost going into the racist part of it. It's just like, dude, you need to tone that stuff down, man. Like, there's no need for it. Like,
I think
just a lot of things in this book annoy the hell out of me.
I think I agree with you in terms of like the world building, in terms of things like that, like talking about the city and seeing the enemy and lines like that. I do agree that his kind of world building leaves something to be desired. You could argue that obviously Batman's world at that point was already kind of convoluted and built up, so maybe he was trying to do something different with it, but he could maybe have taken a better direction. But it is what it is. I think I think actually a lot of people at the time. I'm not saying that because it kind of had racist undertones to it, people liked it, but I think that people liked to kind of the grittiness of it, and I think people like to kind of were taking it seriously at this point. I think that's why a lot of people kind of got on board with it at the
Mm-hmm.
time because of what else was out there.
Oh, yeah, no question. And Frank Miller's take on Batman, I feel like the mid 80s became the definitive take on Batman for a lot of people for the next, well, till now,
Yeah,
I would
yeah,
say. And it's just, it's not the Batman that I like to see. I prefer the Batman, the animated series one, where he's kind of serious and broody and like, oh, I am vengeance, I am the night. But he's also like a decent human being as well.
yeah,
Whereas he's written most of the time as just this crypto fascist nut job who will just beat the hell out of you for, you know, crossing the road when it's not a green man almost. He's not quite Judge Dredd or Robocop or whatever, but he's not far off it when he's written by a lot of folk, and it's just, I don't think you need it. Like, he
yeah,
doesn't have to be that
yeah. He shouldn't.
serious
He
and,
shouldn't deal in
you know,
absolutes. Yeah,
ridiculous.
because only assist deals
Yeah,
in absolutes.
and that's exactly, aye. Thanks, Obi Wan. No, who said that? Was it Yoda?
Yeah, I think it was.
I
Yeah, I think
can't
it was
remember.
Yoda. Have you
Yeah,
read Earth One?
but it's no.
Batman Earth One's quite a good alternative.
Jeff
Yeah.
Johns.
It's basically a modernised version of Year One, to be honest. Again, it follows a rookie Batman that's kind of still amateur and he's kind of finding his feet. And it's very much Year One updated for a kind of more modern audience. The artwork's really good in it, and Year One's a decent start as
Gary
well.
Frank, you
Yeah,
know.
Gary Frank too. Good talent on it. It's
Yeah,
decent
I
book.
liked Wonder Woman Year One. I've read the first book. I've got the second one. I've not got the third one yet, but I've not read the second one. But Wonder Woman Year One is really good. Like again, Grant Morrison, a guy who understands comics. Like he just does. Like probably more than almost anybody on the planet. Like I think he is a comic, but just isn't afraid to go like down the silly route and whatnot. Is not afraid to embrace the dafter aspects of comics, which I'm all about. Like I like the daftness, but there was something about that Year One that just reading it now rubbed me up the wrong way.
Yeah.
I'm afraid to go back and read his Daredevil work because I'm such a big fan of it.
Mhm.
I was talking to my pal about this, Craig, the other day, and he was going, he hadn't gone full Miller yet. Like you should be okay. Like you'll be able to read it, man. Like just read it. And I was like, I don't know.
Take a chance.
But I'll read it at some point.
Um, the next character,
What
the
else you
next
got?
character I've got is down Spider Man. Are you done with Batman? Have you got any other recommendations for Batman?
Uh, Not really. Not. No, I'm good for
Okay.
Batman.
I was just the next big character, I guess, is Spider Man. Do you have any? starting points in mind for Spider-Man? Because this is one that I struggled with a wee bit.
I think my picks are all mostly not the big characters, or sometimes not even superhero ones.
Okay.
I kind of thought I'm not that interested anymore in a lot of them, so there's a reason for that. But like, if you've got something for Spider-Man, go for it, because I love Spider-Man. I just couldn't tell somebody where to start with.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I struggle with it as well because there's been that many reboots and stuff. Coming Home is probably the best place to start. The J. Michael Straczynski story. It picks up with
Yeah,
a Peter Parker that's not been Spider-Man for a while. But it also doesn't. So he has been Spider-Man. You don't see the origin, but if you've got a basic knowledge of the character, you'll be fine. As long as you've seen a few of the movies, kind of thing. Coming Home is a decent place to start. Alternatively, you can go with the first Ultimate Spider-Man book, Power and Responsibility, because it's the first Ultimate book.
that's what I was thinking.
It kind of retells the origin, and it reimagines sort of key characters as the Green Goblin thing and all that, in a different way. But yeah, that's a good place to start also.
It's in a more modern setting as well. I like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko and all the stuff that they did in like the early '60s, but I'm kinda I can take a little bit at a time. I'm going to go back and reread, or sorry, I'm going to go back and read all of the X-Men comics, like from issue 1, like
Right.
up until a certain point, like when I jumped off. But I've got all the masterworks on like Comixology.
Uh-huh.
They were doing a sale, but they're always doing sales, obviously. But I read the first couple of issues and had to put it down because Stanley's dialogue is it's a
Yeah.
lot. It's a lot to take.
Yeah.
Jack Kirby's his artwork is beautiful, like, and is something you could look at all day. But the Stanley style of writing is it's unique. It obviously served them very well for the times,
Uh-huh.
but when you're used to like more natural sounding dialogue, which is what your Frank Miller brought in with Daredevil and whatnot, it's a bit jarring for me. So I think to say to anybody like, "Oh, go back and read like issue 1 of Amazing Spider-Man," that's where you want to start with Spider-Man. Most folk now aren't going to be too comfortable. I don't think reading that. It's too of its time,
Hmm.
and a little bit too silly. Which I've just been going on about how much I embrace the silly. There's a certain level of silly which just becomes a little too much, I think, in Silver Age and Golden Age stuff.
Hmm.
It's just a bit too much for me. So I think Ultimate Spider-Man is a good place. Bendis is, again, sometimes he can be a bit much, but his run on Ultimate Spider-Man was pretty much perfect. I thought, like, at the time anyway. I've not went back and read it, but it's a really good retelling of Spider-Man stories. Like, they went so fast through them.
Uh-huh.
Like, he went through like 40 year of Spider-Man stories in about 50 issues. You were like, slow down.
Yeah.
Just you're going
You could have nothing left.
The modern stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
By him and Mark Bagley.
Yeah. Yeah, the Ultimate books are great. I'd
So
say that's
good.
a good place to start. The next hero I've got is Captain America, who again, his origin's been messed about so many times. It's quite difficult to pin down, a definitive story. Um, my advice would be to start with the films. Go and, if you don't know anything about the character, go and watch the Captain America films, and then go and read Man at a Time. It gives you a feel for the character. Oh, there you go. It gives you a feel for the character and kind of where the MCU took a lot of it from. And then Civil War and Fallen Sun and Ed Brubaker's run in Captain America is also incredible. But I feel like you have to have read Man at a Time first, and maybe have seen the films to sort of appreciate.
I think definitely Man at a Time. Me personally, I wouldn't bother with Civil War because I hate it. Like, just absolutely can't stand Civil War.
Really?
I think it's flat out garbage. Like, yeah, just detest it. It was cool. It was a cool idea. Like, get the heroes like split down the middle and fighting each other, but I just hated the way it was done. Like, everything about it was just
The
it's
def
over with kind of thing. And then they did Civil War 2, like not that long ago, and you're like,
Yeah. That was clearly a cash in. I feel like the film handled that storyline better
Yeah,
than the book did. I feel like the Russo brothers done a better job than Mark Miller did, to be honest,
100%.
with that storyline.
I don't like Mark Miller. Like, I can't be doing with his work in general.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying everything he's done is bad, like, far from it, but it's just in general that I don't like. I think he, a bit like Gareth Ennis, just doesn't seem to like superheroes or something. Like, a lot of the Ultimate stuff, like, I liked at the time, but looking back on it, is just like you don't care much for these characters, or flat out don't like some of them, and it showed a lot. I thought, so I don't particularly enjoy his work. So
I
Civil War to me was just a non-event.
For Civil War, I liked it at the time, and then over as time went on, I've kind of went off it a bit. But I think to this day I prefer it to a lot of Mark Miller's kind of Miller World stuff. Again, Miller World I thought was cool when I was a teenager, and then grew out of it very quickly. And I think now if I had to go back and read Civil War or go back and read Nemesis or American Jesus or something, I would go back and read. I think I would go back and read Civil War before I go and read Kick-Ass again. I don't know. I feel like Civil War's probably actually aged better.
Yeah, like I picked up the first issue of Kick-Ass and didn't read any more of it. I enjoyed the films because they were just like a couple of hours of your time, like it was fine. But Nemesis, didn't read beyond the first issue. Just in general, like
What
I don't really like his
Wanted
work,
is
so
poor as well.
Jupiter. Oh yeah, like I bought the trade paperback at a big Glasgow comic page mart years ago for like 50 pence.
Right.
So swing by those events when they come back on, kids, because you pick up some real bargains. Even if, unlike if like me, you pick up some garbage, like, it'll be cheap garbage, so it's fine. But I started reading it and it got to the point where there was like some of the villains were joking about raping an actress, and I was just like,
It's weird.
done with that. Like, it's there's just no real need for it.
No.
Like, one of my favourites, Alan Moore, has a little bit of like rapiness in some of his books, which I let him slide on it because I really enjoy his work, but I don't see the need for putting it in there. Like, it's just something that just seems to be put in for badness. It's unnecessary. Like, no need. Anyway, off on a tangent about like some horrible stuff.
Do you have any recommendations for Captain America, or would you say Man at a Time is a good place to start?
Man at a Time, definitely. Ed Brubaker's run is like, once you've read Man at a Time, you've basically got the gist of
Yeah.
the character. Like, you know that he was frozen in the ice and come back as part of the Avengers and whatnot. If you want to know more about Captain America in general, I think that entire Ed Brubaker run is phenomenal. It's how I know anything at all about Captain America is through that run. The whole, like, every flashback where it goes back to World War Two and he's with like the invaders and things like that, superb.
Yeah.
Everything with the Red Skull is just like it's just spot on. He brought back the character that, like, other than Uncle Ben, no one thought could ever be brought back, and
Yeah.
made it work so well that we've now got a TV series about the guy, and it's just like, that is how well Ed Brubaker did with Captain America. I didn't enjoy his Uncanny X-Men.
Right.
I think if I went back and read it now, I'd maybe enjoy it better, but I didn't enjoy it at the time. But every single other thing that Ed Brubaker has ever written, I think is like, his Captain America work is like a 9, and his Criminal, Fatale, Incognito, all the stuff
Sleeper.
he does with
Sleeper's great. Sean Phillips.
Sean Phillips, Sleeper, like, all of that is just, it's like a 10,
Yeah.
like, the whole way. The guy is unbelievable, but he had a handle on the whole Captain America side of Marvel that I don't think anybody else has touched, apart from maybe like Mark Grunwald back in the day was supposed to be like Mr. Captain America. I didn't read a lot of his stuff. I've read bits and pieces of it, which I enjoyed, but yeah, Ed Brubaker's stuff on Captain America is, you can't go wrong with it. Basically start at issue 1 and read everything.
Yeah, guy's a genius. Iron Man is the next character that I've got here. Um, I I
Okay.
don't really know what to put for Iron Man. I put Demon in a Bottle and I put Extremis. Um, but again, you're probably better going for the films at this point. Like, go and watch the Iron Man movies, and then once you've got an understanding, jump into Extremis, jump into Demon in a Bottle, and go for there. Would probably be my recommendation.
Yeah, like Denny O'Neill stuff is good, and there, I think the entire Denny O'Neill stuff, which was Demon in a Bottle, was in amongst that. Was it's been picked up in the Marvel Epic
Right.
collections. I think there's like 3 or 4 of them, which pretty much cover the entire Denny O'Neill run. You can't go wrong with that. There's some great stories in there. Uh, some of which I think I was reading when I was younger, like in backup strips and things like that, and like the Marvel UK reprints, and I really enjoyed it at the time. I think Extremis I loved at the time. You obviously wrote a review
Yeah.
for it
Roof for
for
that
the
side
site.
out.
That was you, right?
Yep. It was me.
Yeah. So review up for that on the site. It's a really good book. Warren Ellis is obviously a bit of a problem these days as well.
Yep. Minefield.
So I'm not really into kind of recommending that guy's work to anybody. Matt Fraction, again, another amazing writer. More interested in his own stuff, I think, me personally, reading that than his superhero stuff these days. But he did a run on Iron Man, I think it started with the Invincible Iron Man comic,
Yeah.
which was pretty
Yeah.
good. Introduced Obadiah Stane's son, and like that was some good Iron Man comics. I'm not a big Iron Man fan, to be honest with you. I like him as part of the Avengers. I like him in like bigger stories, but other than the things that I mentioned there, Denny O'Neill stuff, I've never really been that interested in Iron Man, to be honest. So I couldn't really recommend much on him.
The next one I've got is X Men. You mentioned X Men earlier. There is a few jumping in points, I think, for X Men. What I've said that I recommend reading through all 8 volumes of Grant Morrison and Frank Wiley's New X Men. It's a fresh take on the overly convoluted story from beforehand, and it's very. I feel like New X Men is just a page turner. I couldn't put that book down. I read 8 volumes in like a weekend, and then afterwards you can jump straight into Joss Whedon's
I think,
astonishing X Men run. It goes on for like a bunch of trades, but Joss Whedon wrote the first 4. The first 4 are great. So yeah, I'd say they're the kind of essential X Men books, but obviously you can go back further. You can go back to Frank Miller's Wolverine. You can go
yeah,
back to there's so many other sort of jumping in points for X Men. So yeah,
for me, the definitive X Men is like, I mean, I said I'm going to go back and read the Stan Lee and Jack Kirby stuff
hmm
because I've never read it before. But from what I've read, like the definitive X Men to me is Chris Claremont, Dave Cockrum, and then John Byrne. Like that to me is like, so I would start with Giant Size X Men #1, and then when they brought back like X Men like issue 90 something, I can't remember, like the omnibuses that are out of there, or the epic collections and things like that, Marvel Unlimited. Stick with the like, start from the Claremont stuff because that's the X Men, more of the X Men that you know now.
hmm
He, like Chris Claremont, just brought in so much of the mythology, which to this day folk are still using as a springboard for stories. So the Chris Claremont stuff is where it becomes so completely convoluted that now it's like, if you haven't read it for 30 years, it's going to be an issue to find a starting point. But to me, that's where it got like super interesting, is when he brings in the kind of international X-Men with Storm, Colossus, Wolverine, Banshee, Sunfire, Thunderbird, like bringing all them in rather than just 5 white kids
yeah,
from, America. It became something special at that point. That and not the same characters, but New Teen Titans, like go back to Marv Wolfman and George Perez, like just everything that you like about Dick Grayson or Cyborg and stuff like that. That's where that all came from. Like just a great period in time for young teen comics, teen teams.
Yeah, I feel like you can't.
Totally jumped off the X-Men
No,
there,
no, I'm
but
just gonna say I feel like you can't really have a conversation about X Men without mentioning Chris Claremont, because he was such an integral part of those sort of earlier books. Um, yeah, I mean, there's so many runs. There's like Days of Future Past. There's Dark Phoenix Saga. There's so many points that you can jump in.
yep.
I put New X Men because I think it's possibly the best like modern era to jump in. And although I don't know, it's weird. It's kind of hard to describe New X Men. Although it's convoluted because it's Grant Morrison, it's only convoluted within the context of that book. So you're not really too lost as long as you're kind of paying attention to what's happening on the page. I feel like.
Yeah. You're saying you read it all in like a week or something. I think I was the same. I'd stopped reading comics for a while and came back, and I was like, holy crap, Grant Morrison wrote the X-Men, and just bought all the trade paperbacks off eBay and just read them all like, one after the other, and I was like, oh my god, it's so good. But I've not read it since, so I don't know how it's held up,
Mm.
but I loved it at the time.
It's been a few years since I read
absolutely
it,
loved
to be fair.
Like Zorn and all that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was about 3 years ago or so that I read it through. But I read that and then I went straight into Joss Whedon's run. And that was just around the time that the Avengers film was coming out. Again, someday you talk about what you want to talk about something that's problematic, Joss Whedon. But his X Men run's great. Again, he's
Yeah.
say what you want about Joss Whedon personally, he understands superheroes and he understands sort of science fiction storytelling. So yeah, the Astonishing X Men is also pretty great. The last character we've got is Daredevil. We mentioned him earlier. Um, I mean, again, I would start with Man Without Fear and Born Again, personally. I feel like that gives you an idea of Matt Murdock. It gives you an idea of Matt Murdock's supporting cast, and his villains, his Volks Gallery. Say what you want about Frank Miller, those two books are incredible.
Yeah. Absolutely loved them. It's just, I'm just afraid to go back and look at them.
Yeah.
I would go back to like his first issues on it, I think it's like he jumps in as writer like on the second part of a story or something like that. It's like Mr. Fierce. I can't even remember, but he introduces everything that you know as Daredevil. Like now, Turk. The fact that the Kingpin went from being a Spidey villain to being like Daredevil's nemesis. Karen Murdoch like having some kind of like actual personality rather than just being the secretary. Foggy, like just you know, they all become more human under like Mark Miller, Frank Miller stuff. If you're interested in reading Daredevil at all, I think you go back to the very first issues of Mark Miller's. My God, Frank Miller's run. It's like issue 160 something, 170 something. I don't even remember, but like introduces Elektra, the Hand, like all that stuff, and it's phenomenal. Like what he does with what was basically a mid-tier character.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was introduced back at the same time as the X-Men and Fantastic Four, or like that era, early 60s, but never really like a main guy up until Frank Miller comes aboard and just makes it this really like small crime story thing. Like it's just like it's all happening down at the docks, and Daredevil has to go to Josie's bar and interrogate Turk, and it's just like he just builds this whole world, and it's amazing stuff. Like what he went on to do all came from that. So like all your Sin City and Batman stuff and all that, like he cut his teeth on Daredevil, and it's unbelievable work.
Yeah.
So you can't go wrong with it.
Yeah, that was great. That is showing you how he got his suit, showing you, as you're saying, the sort of street level threats that he's dealing with and things like that. Frank Miller's run is ace. So that's all my characters, but you mentioned that you had a few kind of non-superhero characters and things like that. I don't know if you want to go through a few years, Alan.
Aye, definitely. First thing is, I think if you're trying to get someone interested in comics, they're maybe not going to be too into guys in tights wearing their pants over them, punching folk in the face. So sometimes you maybe need to go a little bit like, what kind of films do you like? And if someone likes horror, like I think this book right here is anybody should read it, like regardless of whether they think they like horror or
Yeah.
not, or whether they think they like comics. If Alan Moore, Steve Bissett, and John Totlebin's Swamp Thing doesn't get you going, then no comic is. Like, to be honest, I think it's not for you, and that's fine. Like, not everyone likes comics, but I read this for the first time in about 15 years yesterday, and if it came out today, it would be the best book on the stands. It's absolutely amazing, and we were talking to Alex Prattnadell last week, and he was saying that about how, like, when folk come on to give their new take on a character, like, quite often they throw the baby out with the bathwater kind of thing. Like, they just forget everything you knew before. This is the real story. This is like exactly how this all really did happen. Like, what you've heard is just like a kind of a lie, basically. But Alan Moore came into Swamp Thing, and nothing that came before was wrong, except for one small detail, which was that the character thought he was like one thing, and then he discovers within the course of the first issue that he is something else completely, and that's where the twist comes in, and it just goes from there. And like, the first 7 issues that Alan Moore's run is covered in this first trade paperback. There's an omnibus out now, but the omnibus was recoloured, and it put me off buying it because the colours in this are just, they suited it perfectly, whereas the new one looks too glossy or something.
Right.
Like, I like the old trade paperback where it's more like a matte finish or whatever. It just looks the way like a comic in 1981 or 83, whatever it was when this came out, would look. A bit more kind of dull. Something that kind of annoys me with modern comics a lot is the glossy paper. See, if you're reading it under like a crap light,
Yeah.
you're like trying to move the comic to see it. But yeah, this is one of the best runs of any comic or any character or any creator ever put on paper, and that is the highest possible recommendation I could give for Saga of the Swamp Thing by Alan Moore. If you like horror, it's up your street. It does have the Justice League appear in a couple of issues where he deals with one kind of old school villain that Alan Moore reinvents. The Demon shows up, which this just made me want to read an Alan Moore The Demon series because he writes them so well, but Alan Moore writes everybody well, so like I would read Alan Moore doing the Willie Lumpkin series that we were talking about earlier, the Postman for the Fantastic Four. So like, have you ever read the Alan Moore Swamp Thing
Yeah, I
stuff?
love Alan Moore Swamp Thing. Yeah, I've read that. Great book. Yeah, a great horror comic and a good sort of example of Alan Moore's writing, I think.
Yeah, no question. My next one was, again, not a superhero one. Someone got me this for my birthday years ago, and I was excited to read it. And one of those ones where it gets put on the shelf, and I forgot all about it. And it gets mentioned from time to time, and I'm like, I need to read that book. Like, it's Grant Morrison and Frank Whiteley once again teaming up. And I was saying earlier on that I don't think Frank Whiteley's ever been better than he was in All Star Superman. This book maybe beats it. We Three. You ever read that one?
I've not read it.
It will break you.
I've had it recommended a few times, and I just don't know if I can. It just sounds so dumb.
It's amazing. Like, it's only 3 issues. It is brutal. It is heartbreaking. It is beautiful. It's taken me this long to read it. Again, read it yesterday.
Right.
Yesterday was a good day. Like, I read Alan Moore's like first 7 issues on Swamp Thing, and I read We Three by Grant Morrison and Frank Whiteley. And I'm not going to lie, I was tearing up at the end of this. I've heard folks saying like they were actually in bits at the end of this, and I can see why. but I was kind of forewarned, so like I kind of knew it was coming. But the front page of the front cover, sorry, of each issue is like the missing pet kind of poster for, like, the first one is Bandit the dog. It's a medium-sized dog, brown Labrador mixed, friendly and approachable, answers to Bandit, and the family are offering a reward for him. And there's like this beautiful picture of Bandit, like, in the house. The next one is the cat, which is Mr. What's the cat's name? It doesn't matter. It's just like each. Yeah, there we go. Tinker, a ginger striped cat, and he's just like lounging in the house. And then you've got the rabbit, who is also a missing pet, and his name is. Should just put a marker on here. Pirate. And it's apparently Frank Whiteley got his kids to write the "Can you help us find Pirate? He is white with a brown patch over his eye. He likes lettuce and carrots. Thank you, Johnny and Claire." And then he got his wife to write the "Please phone Mrs. Mortimer on 555-6783." And it's just, you're reading that and you know where the story's going. They're weaponised pets that have been, basically picked up on the streets that escaped. They've been picked up by some shady government agency and turned into these like absolute killing machines, and they escape. And it's so sad. It's so funny in points, but mostly it's just brutal and sad and beautiful, and it will break anyone that reads it. Like, you have to have a heart of stone not to be absolutely in bits towards the end of this story. Like, I wouldn't ruin it for anybody. Like, there's not like a happy ending, but it doesn't go maybe exactly the way that you think it would. It is, again, highest possible recommendation. Grant Morrison basically can't do any wrong as far as I'm concerned, and Frank Whiteley is on the top of his game on this one, which Frank Whiteley on the top of his game is frankly better than most folks, so definitely worth reading.
Okay. You've possibly convinced me.
I would 100% like recommend it. I had another couple. This one here, which I have only read once, I haven't read it since I picked it up a month or two back. It's called Killerman. It is about, I'll read the back cover. James Bellier is a celebrated mixed martial arts star at the top of his game until he's outed as gay by a rival fighter. Abandoned by his training camp, his endorsements, his fans and his sport, to regain his title shot, James is forced to turn to the last person he thought he ever would, Xavier Maine, a legendary fighter in his own right, and the man James watched kill his own father in the ring. It's written by Steve Orlando, who I've liked everything that I've read of his, and Philip Kennedy Johnson, so it's the guy that's doing Superman just now, and something else that we talked about earlier on, I can't remember. But so good. Art from Al Morgan, who has done work on Daredevil, which you can see in some of the MMA fights in it. Like, you can see some Daredevil Frank Miller style knees getting flung at people's jaws. Nice. But if you like mixed martial arts at all, and you like a kind of a Rocky or a Warrior story, then it's a great book. Like, even if you don't really like mixed martial arts, I still think you would enjoy it, because it's not super technical on, like the training and stuff like that. It's a story about the guy kind of being outed by a scumbag rival, and coming back to try and get his title shot kind of thing. So if you like that kind of Rocky Warrior, like that kind of story where the underdog is striving to kind of reach the peak of the sport, then it's up there, and the artwork is beautiful. It's a really cartoony style, which is up my street. Like, this page here I don't know if you can see that too good, but it kind of reminds me of Mazzucchelli on Batman Year One a little bit. That kind of feel to it. So it's really good. Like,
that sounds good. That sounds alright.
Maybe folk don't like the capes and tights. The last one I've got for you is... I think two more. A superhero one, just because I'm not completely like against it, recommending a superhero one. Thor, the Mighty Avenger. It was 8 issues and then it got cancelled, but it is absolutely brilliant. It's I would say it's all ages, but it's got like T for teen on the back of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's who's the writer? The writer I'm not that familiar with, I've got to be honest. Roger Langridge. I was going to look him up, but I thought I had more time, so I didn't. I don't know what else he's done. I don't know what he's famous for. But if this is the only thing he's ever written, then he could retire quite happily from the world of comics as being at the top of the game, I would say. The art is from Chris Samney, who like done some work on Daredevil back in the day, and I think he did like Batgirl, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
He is again another really cartoony guy, but like I think he's one of the best artists out there. Like he can do action so well, but like there's a lot of like comedy and drama in this book as well, and he can do it all, and it's basically a self-contained story. Like I say, it was cancelled, but they got a free comic book day story to kind of tie it up almost.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that they got cancelled, obviously, just because it wasn't part of continuity. Like a lot of folk don't really go for books like that. I didn't buy it at the time. I don't know whether I was off comics at the time or not, but it has everything you need to know about Thor in here. It was obviously come out around about the time of the film because Heimdall's looks a lot like Idris Elba, but it's like he's been banished to Midgard. He doesn't know why. He just knows like he can't go home. He meets Jane Foster. Jane Foster works in a museum in this rather than being a doctor or a nurse. I think she was when she was first introduced. She's more like kind of antiquities and things like that. So it makes perfect sense that like that's how you meet her. And he fights Mr. Hyde. He teams up with Namor. He teams up with Iron Man. He teams up with the Warriors 3.
Nice.
It's just a really good book. Fin Fang Foom shows up in it somewhere as well, and it's just a lot of fun. This was not yesterday, but the day before I read this. This again, I'd bought it years ago, put it on the shelf, and never read it. And it is, that was my loss. It's absolutely fantastic.
That sounds alright. I've not read it myself.
Yeah, I don't think I'm kind of going into detail on why it's good, but it just hit like all the right notes for me. It was kind of silly, but like also had like a lot of really like serious moments in it as well. Namor is great in it. He's nowhere near as much of an asshole in this as he's usually portrayed, but still a little bit of an asshole. Like you still know it's him. Like other than the fact that he's got like nutty little ankle wings and wearing speedos. But Namor's a character I've always quite enjoyed. Like never read a lot of, but whenever he shows up in anything, I'm always like Imperious Rex, Melon Farmer. I do dig a bit of Namor. And the last one I've got is Sean Phillips and Ed Brubaker again.
Nice.
I actually read 2 of theirs, but Criminal.
Oh, amazing.
You ever read that?
One of my favourite comics.
So good.
I love that book.
Yep. I haven't read it in ages, but I'm going back and I'm going to read them all again. Like I read the first issue this morning, like for the first time since it came out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's right. This is so good. It's so good.
And
I love did you buy the single issues or did you buy the trades?
I've got the trades. I know that you can get a compendium, but I've got the trades. I think volumes 1, 2 and 4 are incredible. Coward is my favourite. The first volume is my favourite. I think Court's absolutely
That's what I
brilliant.
mean just now.
But yeah, I mean, Bad Night, which I think's part 4. Yeah, Bad Night's part 4. That's also a great story. The Dead and the Dying's great. Lawless is great. They're all phenomenal. But yeah, 1, 2, and 4 I think are my favourite. The Dead and the Dying. Yeah, there's loads of great books in that series. Yeah, I love the team of Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. I like Fatale, and I like they did one recently.
Everything they do.
They did one recently. It just came out last year, I think. I can't remember.
Kill or Be Killed.
Yeah. That was good. I only did a couple issues, but I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I think it was 18 issues or something like that. Like, if that's the one you're thinking of. That is a really good book as well.
Yeah, Kill or Be Killed. Yeah,
I've never read Fatale. I'd never read Fatale. I've read the first trade, but I hadn't read beyond that. So I read the first trade again because I'm going to read all that, and it's another one. Like, if you like horror, then it's got to be right up your street. I was going to go Hellboy, but Hellboy has had 3 films, couple of cartoons, enough that folk know who Hellboy is.
Yeah.
The books are incredible, like BPRD, Hellboy on his own, really amazing books. I've not read them all, but what I've read, fantastic stuff. But
yeah,
in a similar vein, you've got the Fatale stuff, which has got the cults and, like eldritch horrors, like unnameable, unspeakable demons coming in the kind of everyday world that we know. So,
yeah, it's very lovely.
And it's also written and drawn by 2 complete masters.
Yeah, a lot of Lovecraft and stuff in it as well. Yeah, Fatale's great. And then you've also got Sleeper and The Fade Out. That's 2 other Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips books that are pretty great. I think, see if you're into like your Tarantino and your kind of crime films, go and read Ed Brubaker's stuff with Image. Whether it's Sleeper or whether it's Criminal, probably Criminal. I'd say is for me is my favourite. But yeah, a lot of great stuff there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've done one about supervillains called Incognito. Did you ever read that one?
I think I did. I think I have that trade somewhere. I think I read it years ago. But to be honest, I don't remember much about it. I should probably go back and reread it.
I see. I'm going to read all of this stuff again just because I'm now completely like, oh, that's right. It's so good, and you haven't read it in ages. So yeah.
Yeah, I really need to go back.
That's pretty much all I've got.
I've not read Criminal in a while, but I should go back to that again. Yeah, I'm at the bottom of my list as well. So I think that's a fair few recommendations. If you're looking for somewhere, and you think that we have an idea, which that's debatable. But no, I enjoyed that. I feel like we covered a lot of bases there. I feel like, which was good.
Definitely.
I think on that note, we'll end it. We're nearly at 2 hours, so I think we'll end it there. Alan, thanks for backing us up today, because obviously without you, it'd just been me talking shite for 2 hours. So I'm glad that the 2 of us were able to throw something together.
A pleasure as always, man. A pleasure as always.
I'm sure regular things will be back to normal next week. I think Massimo will be back, and hopefully Ian Lynn will be back, and everything will be sort of up and running again. This was just a bit of a kind of all over the place week, I think, for people. But yeah, thanks for joining us today. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to Disassembled. You can find more news and reviews on BigGlasgowComicPage.com. And don't forget, you can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube as BGCP Comic Con. Make sure you also subscribe on your podcast provider of choice for new episodes every week.